Guys. A few months ago, my life fell apart in the worst possible way. On our anniversary, no less. It started with what should have been a perfect evening. I had planned everything: dinner at her favorite restaurant, a walk along the waterfront, and even a surprise gift she'd been hinting at for months. But something about her felt off. She wasn't her usual self. Distracted, checking her phone constantly, and barely engaging in conversation. When we got home, she went to take a shower, leaving her phone on the coffee table. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it, but this time, something made me pick it up. I don't know if it was intuition or just my imagination running wild, but I unlocked the screen and started scrolling through her messages. And there it was, a message from someone named Mark. "Today was incredible. I can't wait to do it again." My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I stared at the words, my mind racing to make sense of it. This couldn't be what it looked like, could it? But deep down, I already knew the answer. When she came out of the shower, I confronted her, holding the phone up so she could see the message. Her face went pale and her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Mark is just a friend. You're overreacting." I could feel the anger boiling inside me. "A friend?" I snapped. "Do your friends talk about how incredible today was and how they can't wait to do it again?" Her excuses didn't last long. When she realized I wasn't buying her lies, she finally broke down and admitted it. She'd been cheating on me with Mark for months. I can't even describe the way my heart broke in that moment. It was like everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was a lie. She said I had trusted her completely and she'd thrown it all away. On our anniversary, no less. That night, I didn't yell or scream. I just walked out of the room, my head spinning. I didn't know what to do or how to feel. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. The first few weeks after finding out about her affair were some of the darkest days of my life. I felt like I was living in a fog, completely disconnected from the world around me. The hurt was so overwhelming that I didn't know how to process it. All I could do was replay that moment in my mind over and over again. The look on her face when I showed her Mark's message, the pitiful excuses, and the eventual confession. I locked myself in my room most days, barely eating or sleeping. Friends and family reached out, asking if I was okay, but I ignored their calls and texts. I didn't want to explain what had happened. I didn't even know where to start. The betrayal felt like a knife in my back, twisting deeper with every memory I had of us. I kept asking myself the same questions. What did I do wrong? Was I not enough for her? Was there something I missed? I went over every moment in our relationship, trying to pinpoint the exact time when things started to fall apart. But no matter how hard I searched, I couldn't find the answers I was looking for. The worst part was the silence. When you're left alone with your thoughts, they have a way of spiraling into places you don't want to go. I thought about all the times I'd trusted her, all the times I'd believed her lies without a second thought. Every moment of happiness we'd shared now felt like a cruel joke. How long had she been lying to me? How many times had I smiled at her, completely unaware of what she was doing behind my back? One night, I broke down completely. I was sitting on the floor of our bedroom, staring at an old photo of us from when we first started dating. We looked so happy, so in love, and now all I could feel was emptiness. I cried for what felt like hours, the kind of gut-wrenching sobs that leave you feeling hollow. That was the night I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep drowning in this pain, shutting myself off from the world. Anna had already taken so much from me. I couldn't let her take the rest of my life too. I didn't know what moving forward would look like, but I knew I had to try. The next morning, I got out of bed, showered, and forced myself to eat a proper meal for the first time in days. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I began journaling, writing down my thoughts and feelings, just to get them out of my head. It was messy and painful, but it helped. Slowly, I started to find my footing again. I wasn't ready to face Anna yet, but I was beginning to see that this wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about rebuilding myself, piece by piece, no matter how long it took. Before everything fell apart, before the lies and the betrayal, there was a time when I thought Anna was my soulmate. It feels almost surreal to look back on those memories now, knowing how it all ended, but I guess it's part of the process. Trying to figure out how we got here. We met 6 years ago in the most random, movie-like way possible. I was at my usual cafe, typing away on my laptop, working on some ideas for a side project. She was sitting at the table next to mine, clearly flustered and frustrated. I remember glancing over and seeing her sighing loudly, running her hand through her hair as she glared at her screen. I couldn't help myself. "Everything okay over there?" I asked, smiling politely. She looked up, startled at first, but then she smiled. A little embarrassed, but grateful. "No," she admitted. "My computer decided now was the perfect time to crash, and I have a presentation due in an hour." I offered to take a look, and before I knew it, I was helping her troubleshoot her laptop. We sat there for about 30 minutes, chatting while I worked on fixing the issue. She told me she worked in marketing, how she loved her job but hated the tech glitches that came with it. I shared a bit about myself, my work in business development, my love for problem solving. By the time her laptop was up and running again, we were laughing like old friends. She thanked me profusely and, before leaving, handed me her business card. "I owe you a coffee," she said, with a grin. Or at least a thank you drink. I didn't wait long to call her. A few days later, we went out for dinner, and it was like we'd known each other forever. She was funny, charming, and had this energy about her that I couldn't resist. She was ambitious, driven, and full of life, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. The relationship moved fast after that. Within a year, we were living together. 2 years later, we got married. It felt like a fairy tale, like I'd found the person I was meant to spend my life with. We built a life together, shared dreams, and created memories I thought would last forever. Looking back now, I wonder if I missed the signs. Was she always this good at pretending, or did something change along the way? Did I ignore red flags because I was so caught up in the idea of who I thought she was? Whatever the case, those early days feel like a distant memory now. The woman who was once my best friend, my partner in everything, became a stranger. And as much as it hurts to admit, maybe I never really knew her at all. After the initial shock and pain of discovering Anna's affair, I never thought I'd even consider staying with her. But then came the night she knocked on my door, tears streaming down her face, begging for another chance. It had been a few weeks since I found the message from Mark. I was slowly trying to piece myself back together, still avoiding her as much as I could, though we were under the same roof. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, when she sat down across from me. "Jake," she said softly, her voice trembling. I didn't respond, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. She took a deep breath and continued. "I know I hurt you. I made a terrible mistake, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Please, let me make this right." I finally looked up, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Make it right?" I repeated, my tone colder than I intended. "I made it right," I repeated, making it right. "How do you make something like this right, Anna?" She started crying again, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't lose you. Please, Jake. I love you." Hearing those words broke something in me. I didn't believe her, not fully, but a part of me still wanted to. Anyway, a part of me wanted to hold on to the life we'd built together, to cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could fix what was broken. After a long silence, I finally said, "If we're going to try, it's not going to be easy. You need to prove to me that you're serious about this, that you're willing to put in the work." "I can't do this alone, Anna." She nodded quickly, her tears falling harder. "I will. I'll do whatever it takes, I swear." The next day, we started looking for a family therapist. I wasn't sure if it was the right decision, but I knew I needed to try. If there was even a small chance of saving our marriage, I had to take it. The sessions were hard, grueling even. I had to relive the betrayal over and over again, answering questions about my feelings, my fears, my doubts. And I had to confront the reasons behind her actions, digging into her insecurities and the choices that led her to cheat. There were times I wanted to walk out, to tell her it wasn't worth it, but I stayed. For months I stayed. We tried rebuilding what we'd lost, piece by piece. Date nights, long conversations, even a weekend getaway to reconnect. On the surface, it seemed like we were making progress. There were moments when I almost believed we could move past it, that the love we once had was strong enough to survive this, but Deep down, a cold anxiety lingered. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. Or maybe not at all. No matter how much I wanted to forgive her, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something still wasn't right. Well, for a while, it really felt like we were making progress. After months of therapy, we'd fallen into a new rhythm, one that seemed healthier, more open. Anna and I started spending more time together, talking about our feelings and addressing the cracks that had formed in our marriage. It was exhausting, but it felt like we were both trying. At least that's what I thought. We planned weekend trips to escape the stress of everyday life. On one trip to the mountains, we spent hours hiking, laughing, and reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. It felt good, almost normal. In those moments, I could almost forget the pain and betrayal. I could almost believe we were on the path to healing. Anna also started making a point to be more present. She put her phone down during dinner, asked about my day, and even suggested we revisit old hobbies we used to enjoy together. For a while, it worked. I started to believe that maybe we really could rebuild what we'd lost. But even in those moments of peace, there was a shadow I couldn't ignore. It was like a small voice in the back of my mind, whispering that something still wasn't right. Every time her phone buzzed, every time she stayed late at work, that voice got louder. I hated feeling so paranoid, so suspicious of someone I was supposed to trust. But after what she'd done, how could I not be? One night, as we lay in bed, I asked her point blank, "Do you regret what you did?" She turned to face me, her expression soft. "Every single day," she said. "I hate that I hurt you, Jake. I hate that I put us through this. But I'm trying. I swear, I'm trying." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But no matter how many times she said the right words or made the right gestures, there was still a wall between us. It wasn't something you could see or touch, but it was there, this invisible barrier that kept me from feeling truly safe in our marriage. Over the months, I threw myself into our recovery. I wanted so badly for it to work, for all of this pain to be worth it in the end. But deep down, that cold anxiety never went away. It lingered in the quiet moments, in the gaps between our words. And as much as I tried to ignore it, I couldn't help but wonder, was I healing, or was I just setting myself up to get hurt again? Just as I was starting to believe that things were getting better, the cracks began to show again. It was subtle at first, small shifts in Anna's behavior that triggered the same nagging doubts I'd felt before. She started staying late at work more often, claiming she had deadlines or meetings that ran over. Her phone, which she'd been leaving out in the open for months, was now glued to her side again, always on silent. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. After all, we've been working hard to rebuild trust. Maybe it was just old insecurities resurfacing, but the anxiety wouldn't go away. It kept gnawing at me, louder and louder, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, as Anna was taking a shower, I saw her phone sitting unattended on the counter. My heart raced as I stared at it, torn between respecting her privacy and finding out the truth. Eventually, my curiosity, or maybe my fear, won out. I picked it up and unlocked it, my hands trembling. The first few messages I scrolled through were innocent, work. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize. Chris. My stomach tightened as I opened the thread. The most recent message read, "I miss you. When will I see you?" I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My vision blurred as I scrolled up, reading the thread in its entirety. It was all there, the flirting, the planning, the excuses she'd given me so she could meet up with him. Chris wasn't Mark. This was someone new, a fresh betrayal. When Anna came out of the shower, I was still sitting on the bed, holding her phone. She froze when she saw the look on my face, her towel clutched tightly around her. "What's wrong?" she asked, though her voice betrayed her fear. I held up the phone, the thread with Chris open on the screen. "Care to explain this?" I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked like a child caught red-handed. Then, just like before, she tried to lie. "It's not what it looks like," she said quickly. "Chris is just a friend. We were joking around, that's all." "Joking?" I snapped, standing up. "Do you think I'm that stupid? After everything we've been through, after all the work I've put into forgiving you, this is how you repay me?" She started to cry, her voice rising in desperation. "Jake, Please, it's not what you think. I've been stressed, and I just needed someone to talk to. It didn't mean anything." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You must think I'm an idiot. I gave you another chance, Anna. I went to therapy, I trusted you, and you still couldn't help yourself. You threw it all away. For what?" She didn't have an answer. She just stood there, sobbing, as the weight of her actions settled over her. But this time, her tears didn't move me. I was done. The woman standing in front of me wasn't someone I could trust. She wasn't someone I could build a life with, and I wasn't going to let her betray me again. That night, I knew there was no going back. As Anna stood there sobbing, trying to piece together yet another web of excuses, something inside me snapped. The trust, the love, the hope, I realized it was all gone. I'd given her a chance, a way to fix what she'd broken, and she'd thrown it away without a second thought. I didn't yell or scream. I didn't want a dramatic scene. I just took a deep breath and said the words I'd been holding back for far too long. "I'm done, Anna. I can't do this anymore." She froze, her tears still streaming down her face. "Jake, no," she said, shaking her head. "You don't mean that. We can fix this. Please, just give me one more chance." I sighed. I laughed bitterly. "One more chance? Do you even hear yourself? I already gave you that chance. I forgave you when you didn't deserve it. I went to therapy. I fought for this marriage. And you spit on all of it. There's nothing left to fix, Anna. You destroyed it." Her desperation turned to anger. "You're not perfect either, Jake. You're always working, always distant. Maybe if you'd been more present, I wouldn't have needed someone else to talk to." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. "Are you seriously trying to blame me for your cheating?" I asked, my voice rising. "You made a choice, Anna. Twice. Don't you dare try to make this about me." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked to the closet, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing. She followed me, pleading with me to stay, but her words fell on deaf ears. I was done with her lies, her manipulation, her inability to take responsibility for her actions. As I packed, she tried every tactic in the book: apologies, anger, bargaining. "Think about everything we've been through," she said, her voice cracking. "Think about the good times. Don't throw it all away." I stopped and turned to face her, my jaw clenched. "I am thinking about everything we've been through. And you know what I see? A woman who cared more about her own selfish desires than the man who loved her. I see someone who had no problem lying to my face while sneaking around with not one but two other men. That's what I see. Anna." Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the bed, sobbing into her hands. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Her tears weren't about losing me. They were about losing control. And I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I finished packing my bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. As I walked out, she called after me, her voice breaking. "Jake, please, don't leave. I love you." I paused for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. She asked, then I turned around, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "No, Anna, you don't. You love yourself, and I'm finally choosing to do the same." With that, I walked out the door, leaving her behind. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't joy or relief. It was something quieter, deeper. It was freedom. Leaving Anna should have felt like the end of it, but life is never that clean cut. For the next few weeks, we continued to share the same house while I finalized my plans to move out. Those days were some of the most tense and emotionally charged I've ever experienced. Every room in the house felt suffocating, every interaction like walking on a knife's edge. Anna swung wildly between anger and desperation. One moment, she'd lash out, blaming me for her mistakes. "You're just running away because it's easier than fixing things," she said one night, her voice dripping with bitterness. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" The next moment, she'd break down, crying and begging me to reconsider. "Jake, please," she whispered one evening as I passed her in the hallway. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll change. Just don't give up on us." But there was nothing left to save. Her words felt hollow, her promises empty. I'd heard it all before. And this time, I wasn't falling for it. I kept my responses short, my tone neutral, refusing to let her manipulate me again. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, had become a battleground of silence and resentment. Even though I was done emotionally, the practicalities of leaving made everything harder. Splitting up our belongings felt like carving up the life we'd built together. Every item came with a memory, some good, some bad, and each decision about who got what felt like another reminder of how much we'd lost. One night, I sat in the living room, staring at the wedding photos we hadn't taken down yet. It was strange, looking at the smiling faces of the people we used to be. We looked so happy, so sure of our future. I wondered if those people ever really existed, or if it had all been a lie from the start. Anna walked in and saw me looking at the photos. For a moment, she stood there silently, her face a mix of sadness and regret. "Do you ever think about how happy we used to be?" she asked softly. I didn't look at her. "I do, but then I remember what you did, and it reminds me that happiness wasn't enough for you." Her shoulders slumped, and she walked away without another word. That was the last meaningful conversation we had. The tension in the house grew unbearable as the move-out date approached. Every interaction felt like a reminder of the life we were leaving behind, a life that had been shattered by her choices. I could see the cracks in her mask, the way she was trying to hold herself together. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't her fixer, her comfort, or her safety net. Not anymore. Finally, the day came when I couldn't stand another second under that roof. I packed up the last of my things, leaving behind the pieces of a life that no longer belonged to me. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, relief, sadness, and hope. It was the end of something I'd once thought would last forever, but it was also the beginning of something new. The day I left was quiet. No big arguments, no dramatic goodbyes, just the sound of my suitcase wheels clicking against the floor as I walked out of the house for the last time. Anna was in the kitchen when I left. She didn't say anything, and neither did I. We both knew there was nothing left to say. I paused for a moment at the front door, looking back at the house where so many memories had been made, both good and bad. It felt strange, like I was leaving behind not just a home, but a version of myself. The man who had walked into that house all those years ago, full of hope and love, didn't exist anymore. What remained was someone who had been broken and rebuilt, someone who now understood the cost of betrayal. I placed my keys on the table by the door, took one last deep breath, and stepped outside. The air felt different, lighter, freer. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was something close to peace. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my life again. My new apartment was nothing fancy, just a small place in the city where I could start fresh. It didn't have the warmth or character of the house I'd left behind, but it didn't carry the weight of broken promises either. It was mine, and that was enough. The first night in my new place was strange. The silence felt deafening, and the emptiness of the space reminded me of everything I'd lost. But it also reminded me of everything I'd gained, the chance to rebuild, to create a life that wasn't tainted by lies and betrayal. I spent that night unpacking, setting up the essentials, and reflecting on everything that had happened. For the first time, I allowed myself to let go of the anger. It didn't mean I forgave Anna. I didn't, and maybe I never would. But holding on to that rage would only keep me tied to her, and I wasn't willing to let her have that power over me anymore. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window of my new bedroom. It was a simple thing, but it felt symbolic, like a new chapter was beginning. I made coffee, sat by the window, and started thinking about what came next. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Leaving wasn't just about walking away from Anna. It was about walking towards something better, something healthier. And while I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free. And I was finally free to do the things that I knew I should do. It's been a year since I walked out of that house and left Anna behind. Looking back, it feels like a different lifetime. I've spent the past 12 months rebuilding my life, one step at a time, and while the journey hasn't been easy, it's been worth it. My new apartment has slowly become a home. At first, it was just a place to crash, a refuge from the chaos I'd left behind. But over time, I've added my own touches. Photos of my travels, shelves filled with books I'd always meant to read, and even a small corner for painting, a hobby I rediscovered in the quiet moments of being on my own. The reason I made this move is largely due to money. Work has been my anchor through it all. I threw myself into my job, taking on new projects and challenges that helped me regain my confidence. The structure gave me a sense of purpose, and the people I work with reminded me that life doesn't stop just because one part of it falls apart. Socially, things have changed too. At first, I kept to myself, avoiding friends and family because I didn't want to explain what had happened. But eventually, I opened up, and the support I received was overwhelming. My friends reminded me of who I was before Anna, and my family reminded me that I wasn't alone. Their love and encouragement helped me start to see a future beyond the pain. As for dating, I've taken it slow. I needed time to heal, to figure out who I was outside of that relationship. But recently, I've started to dip my toes back into the world of meeting new people. It's scary and exciting all at once. I'm not in a rush to find the one, but I'm open to the possibility. For now, I'm just enjoying the freedom to explore life on my terms. Walking away from what's toxic and painful is hard, but it's the only way to make room for something better. I'm stronger now, more aware of what I deserve and what I won't tolerate. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. So if you're reading this and you're in a situation where you feel trapped or broken, just know this: it gets better. It takes time and it takes work, but you can rebuild. You can find your peace, your happiness, your freedom. I did, and you will too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.